Hi lovelies! Welcome back to March Miniature Madness. Before we get into it, between daylight savings time and March break, I need coffee first. So let's do coffee first. While we wait for the coffee to brew, how about we roll that intro? Hey lovelies! Mina here again. This time slightly caffeinated. Anybody else just about die from the recent time change? You would think that after, a good number of decades of doing this, that it wouldn't be an issue, but oh no, every year it's like my body is unprepared and doing this for the first time. It happened a week ago and I'm still hurting. Coffee helps though, a little. Although it didn't really help that we just had March break. That was last week. And I reverted right back to my natural nocturnal ways, which was glorious last week. Sucked yesterday. Oh, having to get up to get younglings to school. That's too early. Let's just jump right into March Miniature Madness, shall we? I already have. I started this build last month. Actually, it really excited me. I like where this is going. So, okay, let me walk you through my thought process first of like where we got to, where we're going to get to when I start showing you how I did what I did. This, well, not this exact piece, clearly, because, I started it in February and it's now March and there's nothing going on here. So clearly this is not the piece that I am currently working on. It's similar though, so close enough. But these are my inspiration. This is what set off this whole project in motion, at least for this video. Clearly not for the kit, that was separate anyway. See, brain not braining. Anyway, this is the inspiration for my current project. These really cute house-shaped, like shadowbox frame, shelf, tray, display, multi-purpose thingy. There's actually a lot of things you can do with these. And when I saw them, because they're house-shaped, I automatically thought miniatures, because that's where my brain goes. I got this from Dollar Tree. I think they're still available. Could be wrong though, but I think they still are. And they come in a variety of, like they're all house-shaped, but some are like taller, shorter, skinnier, wider. So they do have a little bit of variation in the, the size of the house. And the backgrounds are different depending on the size. This can matter if you want to incorporate the back, but it doesn't have to. You can always, you know, cover it up, paint over it, whatever. We'll get to that later. So then I pulled out my notebook and did some doodles. This is the sketch that I came up with for this house. And what I decided I wanted to do is divide it in two. So there's a main floor and a top floor. And on the main floor, I was thinking I would put like a little living room with like a chair and a lamp and a bookcase, stairs, but not really stairs, maybe like a impression of stairs. And then this, I'm thinking maybe what's that called? I can't remember what the design term is. It's a French term, but it basically means trick of the eye. I was thinking that this would probably just be like a painting to imply that there's a dining room or a kitchen or something back here, just, you know, to break up the space a little bit. And then upstairs would be the bedroom. I'm thinking like a bed and a desk. I was thinking like a wardrobe stuck in this corner under that roof. And then like a desk over on the other side under this roof. The door. Now the door wouldn't like really be a door. It would just be like a paper door against the back wall to make it look like there's a door, but there really isn't a door because, again, limited space. These frames are only so deep. Maybe a chimney. I haven't decided yet if I definitely want to do that. And then this is the color scheme I'm thinking of going with so far. Yellowy orange walls, reddish pink kitchen or dining room. I'm not sure which yet. At this point, I wasn't sure which yet. And a green chair. I already know what fabric I'm using for this chair. It's a scrap of green suede. I already know what I'm using for the carpet on the bedroom. It's going to be purple micro cord. I'm thinking teal wall, and I don't know about the rest of the furniture. Probably white. I like the white wood look with this color scheme, but otherwise, and then maybe like dark wood or black down here. I think that's what we're working with right now. So now comes the part where I take my concept and my supplies and I make this a reality. But for that, we have to go down to the studio and get started. So let's go down to the studio and get started.
The first thing I decided to do for this little house is make a wood floor, and I'm using coffee stir sticks for that. So I just cut the size that looked good, and then I used that first piece as my measurement to cut the other planks. And the little bits at the end, I hung on to those and just cut the rounded edge off, so I would be able to stagger and make it look like a real wood plank floor. Sand the edges where they're cut so that they don't get all scraggly, and so that they lay flat and flush with each other, and also so that you don't accidentally give yourself a sliver, because those are never fun. Because this is a wooden frame and wooden coffee sticks, I decided to go with wood glue. I figured that would give me the best hold. So I just spread some wood glue on the frame on the bottom, and then lay out my planks of wood. And like I said, I'm staggering them so that the seams don't all line up, so it looks like a real hardwood floor, just in smaller scale. I got really lucky with the size that I ended up choosing. It only needed, that one just needed the tiniest little bit shaved off. They only needed a little bit of finagling, and they pretty much fit perfectly. I just eyeballed it, so woohoo! That was good luck, and it looks really cute at the end. I really like that. What I decided after the glue dried is, as much as I liked what it looked like, I didn't like the color, so I made my own stain by just mixing a couple shades of a brown acrylic paint with some water, just to, water it down. And then I just painted that on the wood floor. And I got it thin enough, and I liked the color. I didn't end up wiping any extra. I just put the color down, and I really liked that. Then I went in with some white gesso just to cover up where I'm going to paint the walls. I figured by, covering the wood, it would smooth things out, and then by covering that sticker at the back, it would make covering that easier, which it did. As you can see, I'm painting, this is the color I chose for the upstairs, a nice aqua color, and because of that gesso, the aqua goes over that really bright pattern, and there's no issue with covering it up. You don't see any of that pattern peeking through. It's perfectly covered. I drew a little line. You might be able to see a faint pencil line there to separate the top floor and the bottom floor. I'm not going to be too precise about painting that line though, because it is going to be covered up by a floor, which we'll get to later. But yeah, so I just use that as a guide so I don't overpaint too much. A little bit is fine because, like I said, it's going to get covered up. But if I paint too much, then it could get to be a really big headache. And I decided to paint not just the walls, but like the ceiling, because it's a that like peaked low ceiling. I just thought that looked better to have it all cohesively the same color. I used this package of wood planks, one of the planks from the kit, and cut it down to the size that I measured for the house. And then I mixed up some paint. To mix this color, I used cadmium yellow, this cashmere tan, and white all acrylic paints. And then I painted one side in that yellow color. And then for the other side, I flipped it over and gave it a nice generous coat of tacky glue, which I then smeared out with my finger to give it a nice even coat because I didn't want any like bubbles or puckers. So I got a nice even coat with my finger. And then I'm using a scrap of my gorgeous dark purple micro cord. I use that to make my favorite vest. And I love the scraps. I love the color. I love the feel of the fabric. So I'm gluing that down on the other side of this little plank, and that's going to be the carpet. So the yellow side is going to be the ceiling of the first floor, and the purple is going to be the carpet of the second floor. I used my craft knife to cut out the excess of that purple fabric, and I have the knife tilted a little bit away from the plank. So it's a little bit of an angle, and that helps to get a nice, clean, close cut. Still a little raggedy, but I'll fix it up.
Okay. A lot's happened since the last time I filmed. I did a bunch of work on this house over the weekend. I wasn't sure how I was going to achieve what I wanted to achieve. So I just started experimenting with stuff. And I didn't film it because I wasn't sure if it was going to work. And then it did end up working. And so now we're just going to recap. So let's just recap. Okay, first off, the wall color was a huge pain in the butt. This one was really nice. All I did was the aqua with a little bit of white mixed in. I have saved the orange paint in this zipper bag because I'm still not sure if it's going to work, even though I've gotten to that point. So this is basically orange with a little bit of warm yellow, some white, and the tiniest little touch of that cashmere tan color that I used for the ceiling. And I did that just to, you can see with both of them, they're a little bit muted because just the yellow and just the orange were way too bright. I wanted to dull them down a little bit. But what I did is, same as the second floor, down here I painted the orange on the walls, and it's still rather streaky. I don't know why, because I did the same thing. It's just the white gesso underneath to help smooth out and cover up and just give me a nice surface to paint on. The aqua went on beautifully. This one, not so much. It's still kind of streaky and globby and not the best. This is 2 coats. This is like 4 coats, and it still looks like garbage. So I'm just going with it. I don't care. It's like a textured technique that was popular in the 80s. Yeah, it's intentional. Totally. Then I moved on to the little dining room, which is just like an impression of a dining room, not actually a dining room, clearly because the frame is only so thick and I want the focus to be at the front. So, but I didn't want this to just be a plain blank wall. I needed some kind of interest. So I've made the impression of a dining room by drawing out this rectangle shape, and then inside I painted, I was going for like a pinky red for the dining room because I kind of wanted all the colors to sort of coordinate. Like this is sort of blue, so we've got the orange, and then I'm using a scrap of this green suede, and that obviously looks nice with that. And then I thought like some pink would sort of coordinate. So yeah, I'm trying to like make everything look complementary with each other. So I was going with pinky red. So I painted the majority of that square in that color, and then the bottom is a dark brown to be like a brown wood floor. Once that was all dry, then I used the dark brown again to paint in a table and 2 chairs, which I used a little bit of black to give shadow. You can't see that now, but I did. And then I added some more white for like a curtain. And then I thought to push everything into the back and make it look like it was a separate room, you know, on the back of the house. I tried to give this room a black wash to make it look like it was in shadow, like, you know, the lights turned off. But it's very, I don't know why, but this little section right here would not take the color. Everywhere else, and I was able to get like this nice dark up at the top, and then it sort of fades as the room opens up. This part of the room, like the bulk of it, took the wash very nicely, and I could manipulate it and move it around. These spots here, I don't know why I could not manipulate. When I tried to move the wash around to get it to look thin like everywhere else, it just wiped off completely. So in order to put any color down, I had to just like dab it. I basically used like my finger. Yeah, so it doesn't look the best, but good enough is good enough. Okay, so yeah, because I tried doing this like 3 separate times, and I tried layering while the paint was still wet. I tried leaving the paint to dry completely, like overnight, and then going back and putting another coat on. And for some reason, every time I tried to brush black wash, it would just come right off. It didn't affect the paint underneath. The pinky red is still intact. It wasn't moving. But the black just, for whatever reason, would not stick in those 2 spots. So then, while this was going on, I made the stairs. And to make the stairs, what I did is I used some thin cardboard. It's a little bit thicker, but it's basically the same kind of material that like cereal boxes are made out of. And how I got the stairs, you can kind of see it because I did a really crappy job with this, is I measured out how high I wanted the stairs to be, and then I made lines. And then I figured out how deep I wanted the stairs to be, and I made more lines. And then I just figured out where on the grid to cut the little doot, 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 to make the stairs. And sadly, you can still kind of see the grid through there. Maybe that's what the still wet orange paint will be used for, to put another coat on. That might work. It would have been smarter to gesso the stairs before putting color on. I didn't do that. And that's why the oranges don't quite match up, because I painted right on the cardboard instead of having a white base first. But I'm hoping maybe that lends to the depth or something. Door frame, I cut strips out, angled the edges, painted the cardboard brown, so it's just a little bit darker, and then just glued that down with tacky glue. I used a little bit of that card for the baseboard at the back because I didn't want it to stick out too far from the door frame. And then I used a bit of coffee stir stick, painted brown to match the rest of the trim. And that's the baseboard on the side. And then to get the stairs to stick properly, because this is now raised with the door frame, I used some scraps of this cardboard and just put a little bit, just like at the bottom here. I glued a little bit, and I glued a little bit at the top, just to make it equal to the same height. So it's the same height of, or the same thickness of card that's on the door frame that I glued just up to the door frame there, and then at the top. But this way it like lays nicely. It doesn't warp and bend to go around the door frame. I also put a fireplace in. I just felt like this room needed a little extra cozy. So some more scraps of coffee stir stick just got cut down with my pliers. I used the one piece for the side to figure out how high I wanted it, measured the second piece, and then these two, there's this black one and then this one here. Once I glued the two sides in, then I just measured and marked where I wanted the interior pieces to be, cut those down, sanded them, and glued them in place. I painted the middle of the fireplace black, and then I've started with a white flame. I'm going to paint red and orange and yellow on top, but I just figured if it had a white base, it'll show it, like the other colors will show up a little bit better on top of the black. I have also started on the brick for the fireplace. I'm just going with like an implied brick. I'm not going to bother painting all the individual squares. So I just went in first with a base coat of brick red, and then splotches of that cashmere tan and a darker brown. I think that's like espresso. I think that's what it's called. And just splotched those and made sure to get the side just in case. I'm going to frame it, but I don't know how much is going to be covered. Okay, the plan is to dry brush some gray over the fireplace to take those colors down a little bit, because the red is a little too red. Yeah, that looks better. Okay, now I'm going to work on the fire. Oh, I like what that looks like.
I'm using the fireplace to help me gauge the scale of what's going to become a chair that I'm making out of the scrap of foam board. I'm not following any strict sizing. I don't know if this is going to end up being like 1/12 or 1/24 or somewhere in between. I'm just making it to look like it fits together. And yeah, so I'm just using the fireplace to gauge what size the chair should be, and then making the chair look like it fits within the room, just within the scale of whatever this ends up being. And what I'm doing right now is not what I'm going to end up doing. Anyway, the pieces that I used didn't quite work out. So now I'm covering it with a scrap of the green suede, and I'm just going to wrap it. I don't care what the chair looks like from behind. It's going to be permanently glued into the little living room. So I just want it to look good from the front. So I'm just wrapping everything around. I just want it to lay smooth at the front and be the least amount of bulk at the back. So I can get it, you know, as close to the back wall as possible, so that I can have, how do I want to explain this? I want the majority of the piece to be at the front, so I don't want it to be bulky at the back, so that I can have the space at the I don't know if any of that makes sense. Anyway, I'm using copious amounts of glue, and I'm just going to try and like pinch and pleat, and again, keeping it as smooth and pretty from the front as possible, and just keeping the bulk down as much as possible at the back while just trying to secure everything. And yeah, I end up doing most of this without filming because the chair was a bit of a pain in the butt. I had to remake the arms like twice because I goofed up how I was going to make it. And for the railing, I went ahead and did that because I wasn't sure how I was going to do it. I ended up using this leftover corrugated piece that was from a kit, and I cut the individual corrugations into tiny little pieces for the base of the railing, and then one long piece for the actual railing. And as you can see, it's the same like reddish brown. I didn't change the color. It was just, I used what I had. And now I'm gluing the arm on the chair. Originally, I was going to have a wider base piece and smaller arm pieces, but I didn't like how that looked. So I ended up cutting the base piece down and making the arms bigger. The top piece is a leftover book blank from my library miniature, and the feet are a leftover frame from the kit I made in the last video. I just glued those together and whipped up a reddish brown paint that matches the railing. I liked how that reddish brown looked with the scheme of the room, so I ran with it for the wood furniture. And then that round piece was supposed to be, I think, like a picture frame or something from another kit, and then a wooden spool from just like, I don't know, like a sewing knick-knack something. It's not a real wooden spool. And I painted the top white just so it would cover nicer later on. That is a frame that was pre-made and left over from another kit with just a random picture in it that I glued on the fireplace. Now I'm putting the bench in. I've decided that this is going to be like a little front entryway. So we have a nice little bench, and then this is the table that I've decided to use for the living room. Painting it the reddish brown, which is much more cohesive now that I've got the top. That white really helped. And drying it on a toothpick. While I wait for the living room furniture to dry, I'm potentially jumping the gun here, but I'm a little impatient, so I'm just going to go ahead and glue in the ceiling/floor. I think I'm done with all the tight squeezes though, because the back wall's done and the fireplace, so it should be good, I hope. Anyway, as you can see, it's a bit of a tight squeeze, which is what I wanted. I wanted it to fit in mostly with tension and, only a little bit of glue. And then because I was careful painting both the main and top floors, it looks nice and neat. This is probably my favorite piece of this build so far, a bookcase. So I'm using these little skinny dowels, and I just mark out how big I want them based on the space I have on the shelf that I already made. And then I'm just cutting those down. I'm using this little bit of leftover foam just to build up the shelf a little bit, because I'm not making full books this time. It would be way too small, so I'm cutting some corners. Once I glue in the foam, then I'm going to glue in the little pieces of dowel, and these are going to be book spines. That shelf I also previously built, and it's just the cardboard, like cereal box card, basically, with a rounded shape at the top, which I did by just like softening and bending the cardboard and then gluing it in place. And there's the spines, which I then go ahead and paint. Now, as well as these skinny dowels, I also used little bits of flat wood that were left over from last video's build. They were the cutouts from the frame from the cutouts of the wooden pieces. I spontaneously made this little lamp out of some beads. The green bead started life as a pearl colored bead, and I painted that with some neon paint, and then the little shade is like a floral type bead that I painted just the inside of, and then I stuck those both to a toothpick and used a tiny little seed bead on top to be, I think that's called the finial, a little bit on the top of the lamp. Then I glued that onto the table. And now I'm going to glue the chair into place. Pretty self-explanatory. You can see what I'm doing. The glue that I'm using for pretty much this entire project, except for the floor I used wood glue, everything else is tacky glue, and so far that's worked just fine. As you can see, I've also added another picture to the mantle, as well as a bead with some dried, like fake floral stuff to be like a little plant on the fireplace mantle. This is a spontaneous idea that I got for the entry. So I cut this weird, it's basically a cape shape. It's just got like the round at the top and then like a bell shape at the bottom. And this was totally experiment. I wasn't sure if it was going to work. I sewed a running stitch around the circle at the top, as close to the edge as possible. I'm trying to make it look like a hood on a cloak. I still kind of suck at filming because this stuff is so small. It's really hard to capture on camera and be able to see it. So unfortunately I'm out of frame a bunch of times, but I did the best I could. So now I'm just securing that running stitch after I have gathered the hood down. And I think it's pretty effective. It looks cloak-like.
So I went ahead and embellished the spines of the books using silver and gold marker pens as well as paint. And I did both just like the lines that you would see on fancy leather-bound books, as well as writing. That might be like the title. I also did a little pattern on that yellow book. I thought that was kind of cute. And then I Mod Podged everything to protect it. Glued a little piece of beach glass as part of the display on top of the book. And finished off the top shelf with some more scrap wood and mini dowel book spines, which I painted and embellished in much the same way as the other two shelves. And I also made a little plant. This was a piece of plastic that I don't remember what it came from, but it's just like a little cylinder of plastic. I painted that red and then gave it a coat of gloss Mod Podge. And I glued in, this was a plant left over from, I'm not sure which. Oh, I think this was a part of a plant that got trimmed off of plants from the mermaid bedroom miniature that I made. That's in one of my miniature tours. I will link it above and down below if you want to check that one out. It's a very pretty, differently shaped miniature. I really like that one. Anyway, so I used some scraps and I rounded the edges and then took the leaves off the stem and glued the little leaves in the little plastic cylinder to make it look like a little succulent or something. And now I am going to glue that in place. I'll glue on the bottom and the back. And it's going to go right here beside the chair. There we go. I also took a tiny piece of toothpick, sanded one of the ends at an angle, and then kind of rounded the other end. And obviously glued it to the wall. And this is going to be a coat hook for the little cloak. Because I was going to do like a front door here, but I decided against it, basically because I glue the baseboard in and I didn't want to rip it back out. That's when plans changed and I made the little bench. And now I'm going to envision that if the front wall was still here on the house, then the front door would be like right around here. So this would be like the little entryway area with the little bench for putting shoes on, and then a little hook for hanging coats. Of course, I went with a cloak instead because, well, for one thing, that's easier to construct at this size, and also, I like cloaks better. I wish that those would be more fashionable than coats. Bring back the cloak.
I felt like the entryway needed just a little bit more color, so I grabbed a little scrap of this green felt, and I gave it a coat of that dark green acrylic paint. As you can see, it mutes the color down and it coordinates with the rest of the floor much nicer. And then I rounded the corners to make it look like a front entryway mat, and just glued that down with some tacky glue. And this is basically where I'm gonna leave this video because I have a whole other floor and this video is already pretty long. So we're going to call this a part 1 and will to be continued in the next video.